there's something compulsive about those two poles, yeah. But the free space relies in the human heart forces, I would say. Anyway, the question is, the goal of those forces which work against the human being is always to reduce the 3 to the 2 and get rid of the middle term, to get rid of the middle element, whatever it is, wherever it is, whenever it is. So there was a certain war against the Central European element. I don't say only Germany, but I mean also war against, for example, what the Austro-Hungarian Empire was, or what it could have become, you know?
Yeah.
And a reduction of Europe from 3 to 2. And now we see Russia, you see. Russia is on the global scale. You're in its Eurasian quality. It's the only part of the West, Henrik, which really understands, or at least understands a lot better, the Asians than the Europeans do, or certainly than the Americans do. Yeah? And so the goal of these forces in the Anglo-American West now is to make sure, not only to make sure that Russia is, how can I put it, chronically weakened, whether it be in its genetic stock, whether it be in the breakdown of its social order, whether it be in the breakdown of its spiritual life, and even in its political and state form. So they wish to reduce Russia back to what it used to be in the days of Ivan the Terrible. That means west of the Urals.
And again, I think that we can see this in the way that the so-called Russian satellite states have been taken over as well by Western forces. Again, you have all these color revolutions, Georgia, Ukraine, and so forth, and they're trying to make them more into, well, they say pro-European or whatever, but in many cases I see that also that NATO is there, meaning that the U.S. forces are there, you know, in that sense. And, you know, there's just something to that they're trying to decimate or grab a little piece here and there all the time of what formerly was the Soviet Union or you know, Russia.
Yes, indeed. And, you know, Henry, I mean, I wouldn't want your listeners to get me wrong. You know, I'm not saying Putin is a great man or Russia is a perfect society or anything like that.
Sure.
Even the Russians themselves, if you go back to Russian writing in the 19th century, they were aware that there was a waiting element about their culture. There was a young element about it which hadn't come yet, so to speak. There was a future-oriented element to it, you see?
Yeah.
And I would say that's still the case now. Russia is still finding its way forward, and that's why it's going through certain painful processes. But if the West were to try to emasculate, were to try to undermine and sap the energies of Russia in such a way that Russia and the Slavic world could not contribute to humanity, because every human culture has a go at this. Every human culture has a chance to contribute something to humanity at a certain point in history. If the Russians and the Slavs are not able to contribute in the next epoch, which won't be from the 4th millennium, 3573, if they won't be able to do that, then that will have severe consequences. So Steiner's emphasis was that the West and the Russians themselves must not allow the connection between the center of Europe and that also includes Scandinavia, by the way, and I'm thinking of Sweden as well here, that the connection between the center of Europe and Russia to be broken. Because this connection between the center of Europe and the east of Europe, center of Europe and Russia, is very, very important for the future. And the West wishes when I say the West, I mean the elite forces in the West, wish to do precisely that, so that there will be another binary created, you see. If Asia comes up to the Urals, Henrik, as is described in this Economist article, if Muslim forces and Chinese forces take over the whole of Siberia, and the Russians who live there are forced out, and Russia then comes back west of the Urals, then the Anglo-American forces will seek to draw Russia into the EU in such a way that the EU and America will become one transatlantic unit.
Yes.
The Oceania, if you will, the Oceania of
1984.
Exactly, writ large. Yeah?
Yes.
And that we see signaled in these two economists I've referred to from the early 90s, and we can see that happening step by step, day by day, week by week, of how in all kinds of ways the American and the British and the European elite are trying to weave and knit together North America and the European Union.
Well,
and this is for another binary struggle,
yes.
an almighty binary struggle, Henrik, in the 21st century between this world of the West and the world represented by China.
It's very, very interesting listening to this. It's a kind of what you're describing here is that there needs to, at this particular time, also then come in a balance into this these two, the binary forces and the power that is involved in when these forces are kind of fighting each other, if you will. And this is about, I guess, also in one sense preventing, because many people now in this day they see kind of almost like a looming catastrophe if we don't manage to get a hold of the situation, because on one sense it feels like it could erupt in war or what have you, or another world war in that sense. But do you see that? Do you see a positive trend here? Do you see something that points to the fact that we won't have this binary system for much longer, or do you think that the forces of the West and the elite of the West will prevail and actually keep Russia decimated or low, as it were?
Well, Henrik, one of the things which in the history of the West has been incredibly difficult to understand has been the concept of Trinity, which is threefoldness. And if you follow the history of what is called esoteric Christianity, and I would argue that not enough attention is paid to that in alternative circles, there is rather an interest only in the ancient pre-Christian wisdom of the Near and Far East, so to speak, or But if one follows this and one sees how, for example, in the 18th century, you see the idea of liberty, equality, fraternity come forward, but it came forward only in an abstract sense, and Europe was not able to make anything of that in any real way in the 19th century, and so we got all the problems of Marxism. Steiner tried in the 20th century to bring forward this idea of threefoldness into actual social reality, in actually grounding it not only in the nature of the human being, where is the threefoldness in me as a individual human being, but where is it in society, where is it in culture, and can we create a society on the basis of threefold culture? For example, I'm aware of time, so I'll make this very short, our present problem, so much of it is caused by the fact that our economic realm is interfered with by our political realm and vice versa. The economic realm interferes with the spiritual cultural realm and vice versa. The Vatican tries to interfere with the political realm. These three realms, this is the threefoldness, you see. Yeah. Liberty in the spiritual cultural realm, equality in the political realm, and brotherhood and fraternity in the economic realm. These three realms must be clarified, and we must realize that they have their separate places. We must disentangle them. For so many of our problems are caused by the fact that we've got so much, they're all mixed up. For example, think of the recent American election and how much money was spent on that.
Yeah.
You see? Or one of Steiner's most radical ideas, for example, was we need to separate labor from work. Labor from money. Yeah, the idea that, for example, you can be paid for your time. The idea that one human being's life, the time of one human being's life, is worth more than another human being's life.
Right.
How do you quantify? Whether your time, Henrik, is worth 1,000 kroner or 1,500 kroner, whatever it is.
Yeah, that's right.
And how do you quantify what somebody's life, somebody's time, you see?
Yeah.
So he was saying, well, we've got to look at ways in which the economic realm and the political realm are differentiated and separated so that then they can be reintegrated and harmonized in a way that's analogous, not exactly the same, but analogous to the way in which our nerve system, our heart-lung system, and our metabolic system harmoniously operate within the human organism.
Well,
they're separate, but they're harmonious.
Right. Well, it's a very good point. We need the whole body, and you need all the elements for a healthy body, and for if we use the body again as an analogy for the planet or the culture that we're in, or life basically. So it's a very good analogy. Right. Yes.
Yeah, we've got to become familiar with this threefoldness within the human being and within society. This would be a way to overcome this threatening binaries, you see.
And so,
but that means that Europe has to become aware of itself as a threefold entity too.
And so this is the challenge, I guess, also then for us living in this third millennium, as it were, when things potentially could go either to pieces or that we actually end up in the right way and prosper after this point, if you know what I mean.
Exactly, Henry. We're moving from the second millennium to the third millennium. We're moving from the 2 to the 3.
Yeah.
Even there, you see. So the question is, in this third millennium, one needs to see how this threefold picture could come about, and a symptom of that is when Tony Blair was in office, if you remember, with Bill Clinton, they started talking about the third way.
Yes.
You remember that,
yes.
Yeah? And for a time there was a lot of talk about the third way, yeah? But all they meant by the third way was simply putting the old capitalism and the old socialism together.
Yeah, exactly.
That's not the third way. and promptly many people in the elite-sponsored media then sort of poured scorn on this and said, well, actually there is no third way. There is only, the way of Anglo-American free market capitalism.
So that is the artificial version that we're being offered again then.
Yes, exactly so. So and yet this present economic crisis has revealed, you see, as everybody's recognizing, that this isn't going anywhere either.
No.
So the binary of capitalism, communism has failed. And so now is the time, above all, when, as I said before, the human being comes through these 3 phases, from 7 to 14 to 21, that we've come to this ego point in the history of humanity. And now is this point where we have to realize that this threefold ego, this threefold, how can I say, the threefold element within the human being needs to be reflected within the society. Steiner made the point that, in the one of the reasons why things didn't work out in the 19th century was that say around about the early 19th century, that they had these remarkable concepts about the human being, but they remained very abstract, and they couldn't be grounded in such a way that they could be applied concretely to the specific realms. And that was a key problem at that time. So we need to really need to make these now specific. And it's actually, if people can actually start to think of in that sense and start to work with these threefold ideas, then they could start to see how these different realms interfere with each other. How the state, for example, is constantly interfering with education. I don't know how it is in Sweden, but it's a nightmare in Britain. How education is always a political football.
Yeah, same
and
here.
Yet, is it the same in Sweden?
Yeah.
Steiner's point was, if teachers are going to raise free-thinking human beings, then the state has to get out of the heads of teachers.
That's right.
Teachers have to be free.
Yeah.
Teachers have to be free to teach freely so that kids can be free,
That's right.
and think freely. But the state is telling us here in England what teachers should teach, and has been doing that since the early 80s, when the British government said, well, how can we improve our economic efficiency against the Japanese? Well, we have to have the same kind of system that the Japanese have,
exactly.
which is lockstep, you see, and governed by the state. Where everybody's studying the same book at the same time or the same curriculum. It's not quite that bad now, but still the state basically tells the teachers what to do.
Yeah. Well, this is very, very fascinating, and I love at some point here soon to have you back again, because I know that there's so much more that we will not have time to go into here today. Among other things, the importance of the European Union, even going into some more information about Caspar Hauser, which is another area, another interesting person that you talk and write about, and then of course even more. Actually, background on Steiner, the Waldorf system potentially, and anthroposophy as well,
Anthroposophy,
anthroposophy. Sorry, yes, exactly.
Yeah.
But I think that this is a good place here, Terry, to begin to run things up here for this time. Is there anything more you'd like to leave us with before we mention your websites and so forth again?
No, I think you've already done it, Henrik. Yeah, it's been really pleasure. It's been a great pleasure talking to you.
Absolutely. And again, then I want to highlight for people that are interested in hearing more from you that you will be speaking at the Alternative View in London at the end of May. The website for tickets, times, dates, etc. is thealternativeview.co.uk, and then Terry's own website is Monju. That's MONJU.P.